we'll do the live thing first. Like. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. Welcome back to part 2 of making bread. If you're already on this episode and you haven't seen our last one, go back and listen to it. Go back and watch it on YouTube if you're watching there and see how we got to this point so far. But before we get into it, I just want to say again, thank you so much to all of our listeners. Thanks you for coming back again and again, taking your time. You know, it's been a full week already if you were with us last week, and I miss you guys already. Again, if you ever wanted to donate to the podcast, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thebigmarkpod. Reach out to the podcast anytime at the Bigmark Pod, at the Bigmark Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. You can also like and share and subscribe, and make sure you're following along on whatever platform you're watching on. If it's YouTube, subscribe to the channel. If it's on Spotify, follow along. Do all that good stuff wherever you're listening. And again, if you really like the podcast, please tell your friends, share it. We want to grow the community as much as we can. That's why we're doing fun stuff like today. So, again, part 2. So, yesterday, about 24 hours ago, we made up this bread here. Like I said, the starter I used hadn't been fed in about 5 months, I'd say. And this bread, or this dough right now, is looking phenomenal. I'm just taking the top off. I know it's kind of hard to see, but anyone who's just listening, it's nice and airy. It's doubled in size. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to shape the dough. So we want to get the dough into, it's more or less its final bread shape. So you're going to need like a little basket like this, a banneton I think this is called, but you can also use just a regular bowl with a tea towel in it. But the first things first, you want to get some, I just use all-purpose flour. I don't want to waste my bread flour. I put a little bit down on my surface. Then I'm just going to work the dough on here a little bit. And when you're getting it out, I like to again use a little tablespoon here. Help the dough out a little bit. See how it's nice and airy. We got nice bubble action. That's again, you know, the yeast doing its work here. Oh yeah. So you just kind of pull it out here. You don't want to crush those bubbles too much. You want to encourage them, but at the same time, just get it out of the bowl. I like to scrape up all the goodness here because it's not about looking pretty yet at this stage. So get all that hard work you put in out of there, set that to the side. And again, you want to make sure you can work it. So put a good amount of flour down there, just so it doesn't stick. And what I do is I kind of push it down a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of fold it in on itself. We're going to bring the sides out into the middle, press down. Again, if you see any bits, pull from the outside and kind of work your way around like a little package. You're pulling it all in. And you'll kind of notice that you're basically forming a bit of like a skin on the outside of the dough. And that's the idea today when we're forming the dough. So after we done that, we're going to put a little bit more flour down, and then we're going to turn it over, and we're going to start shaping it. So we're going to push out, and pull. I'm kind of tucking my hands. Now it's a little hard for you guys to see on the video, but I'm pushing the dough out, pulling it in with 2 hands, kind of pushing out, and then cupping it in. And again, I'm just encouraging. Imagine you're picking a spot on the outside of the bread. You want to keep that on the top of the bread. You don't want to just tuck it under and keep rolling it over. Then when it's nice like that, get a little bit more flour, put it on top. And another thing here, especially with these little baskets, you want to make sure you're getting lots of flour in there just so it doesn't stick. Just so it doesn't stick. Get a little bit more in there. I kind of dust it around like this, just to make sure, again, nothing sticks. Flip it over, really important, flip it over, we're putting it in upside down. Put the dough in upside down like that. And then I like to take a little tea towel here, fold in half, and boom. putting it to bed again. So we'll see this again tomorrow with television magic. Well, we'll come back after 24 hours again, another rest of these. I think you can get away with as little as 4 hours rest and the second rest. But again, we just given this thing as much time as it can have, and again, more time to rise, more time for all those flavors to congeal and happen and get happy. So again, we'll let that rise again. It's gonna not fully double in size, but it's gonna rise up. Hopefully, that the dough is coming out of the basket a little bit. And then we bake tomorrow. I'll show you how to do that. So, see you tomorrow. All right, it's the next day. It's about 24 hours. To be honest with you, this morning when I actually got back into it, I came downstairs to see where I left out in the basket, doing its thing. The dough there, getting happy, doing its nasty thing. It was like really proofing super high, probably ready to bake right then and there this morning. So it only took about 8 hours for its second proof. Now, we all know life gets in the way, things happen. Sometimes the schedule gets all mixed around. So, like me, I'll show you what happens and what you can do if you can't really bake it right away and save yourself some time. So, we go to our trusty friend, the fridge. Because again, what we're trying to do is kind of slow down some of the processes that are happening with the yeast and everything. So we'll put it in the fridge, slow it down, so hopefully it doesn't, because like, I guess you can overproof, it can really get out of shape, get too, I think the lattice structure inside probably doesn't hold up as well. Again, we're not trying to get super technical with all this, but if you ever need to buy yourself some time for any reason, and even if you know you're definitely not going to be able to bake it within 8 hours, put it in the fridge right away, slip it right in, even in the basket. It'll still do its thing nice and slow and save yourself some more time, and by the time it gets to room temperature when you pull it out, it'll be fine. So, this bad boy's been chilling in the fridge, literally. So we'll pop it out like this, it's ready to go. Now, I always have a little bit of a trick to get these out of the basket. You kind of have to work your way around. Don't pull down really hard, just kind of like assist gravity. Pull it down, just separate it from the basket itself. Like I said, let gravity do a lot of the work. Like John Mayer says, help it out a little bit more, and there we go. Look at that little guy. So we're not quite ready to put it in the Dutch oven, which right now has been sitting in a 500-degree oven. So I turned on the oven, waited a couple seconds, and then put the Dutch oven right in as it was like just warming up. So it's been in there for a little bit. It's probably been there for about like 10 minutes or so. And it's getting hot. It's you're basically getting that Dutch oven heated so that as soon as you put the dough in, it's going to start its baking process. It's not going to have time to, or you're not going to have to wait for it to heat up, and because you're using a cast iron Dutch oven, they take a while to heat up anyway. So pump up your oven to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, let it sit there for a bit, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take it out, we're going to put the bread inside, we're going to score the bread, and then we're going to put it back in the oven at 425. So I'm going to grab the Dutch oven right now, bring it out, and again, always be super careful. This is really hot. I got my trusty oven gloves here. I kind of do a two-handed semi-Michael Jackson technique. So I got one on one hand, and I got the other kind of in this hand. So even if you have like another oven-safe kind of cloth you can use, I grab with this because sometimes you need this free hand to do other stuff. We also have a little piece of parchment paper, which I'm going to put down. Some people like to use more flour, corn's meal even at the bottom. Totally up to you, but not necessary. You just have to be careful, or not necessarily be careful, just again, this is going to be really hot, so use caution. I don't use any steam or spray any water or anything like that in this recipe. Again, keeping it simple today. So, watch me go. Whew. That's a spicy meatball. So we're gonna bring this out here. We want to work pretty fast here. Doesn't have to necessarily be lightning speed, but again, you don't want to lose too much heat here. So I'm just gonna put this over here. Actually, I don't want to put it down on the wood. And throw that puppy in there. Again, bust this thing again out of its house. Be super careful putting it in. And I don't have my lom right now, which is basically just a fancy word for a razor. I'm going to just use scissors, and probably all y'all have some scissors too if you've never done this before. So we're just going to cut like a cross. Like cut one way and then perpendicular, just like cut across into the top. We're essentially doing this because you want, the steam is going to escape from the bread somehow. And if you score it, it's going to come out there. If you don't score it, it's going to find a way somewhere else. Ah! So we're going to bring this back down to 425 now. Woo! That's a spicy meatball. It looks like I kind of like scorched my hot pad even. Whoa! Rock and roll. So we're sticking that in there. Bust out the old trusty timer, and that's going to sit in there. Oops. That's going to sit in there for 35 minutes. Then we're going to go back to it, and we're going to check it at 35. We're going to take the lid off. So you saw I put the lid back on there. We're going to take the lid off, and then that kind of becomes like the browning stage. So you can kind of like, excuse me, depending on what you want and how you like your bread and the crust kind of on the outside, you let it sit in there again. Brought it down to 425, super important. That shouldn't burn it. The cast iron itself is already at like 500 degrees relatively. We threw it in there, closed the lid. Now it's in this little enclosed area that's like getting really hot but also being kept warm by the rest of the oven. Again, I don't hit it with the steam. I haven't seen it really need the steam in this recipe. I don't know why. I've done other recipes where you spray it down with a little water first or whatever, add a little bit of water, because that's the thing with these big commercial ovens. You can actually inject steam in it. Actually, there's some small home versions now you can get, but that's what it takes. It takes this big industrial strength oven with this heavy duty steam to get that surface pressure, because essentially what we want is to almost like flash cook the outside of the bread. So cook the outside of it really quickly so we get that crust, and then allow the inside to slowly kind of finish off nice and easy. And again, I like to have a crumb, which is what they call the crumb, essentially how like if you took a slice of bread and you looked at it, that is the crumb. Some, especially sourdoughs, modern sourdough recipes, the idea is to have this crumb with these big giant holes in it and all this flavor in just the bread, and which is amazing. And the bread itself is good, and maybe you can use it to kind of like dip or add a little bit of butter at a time. But you can't really make a sandwich with it. You can't really spread a good piece of butter on and let that shit melt in. So I like this style crumb. Hopefully this is what we're going to get with this one. I'm sure we will. Again, a little overproofed, but this is the fun part about baking, especially bread. And when we make it this simple and make the approach so easy, it really allows room for some error and some variance that if you get good at it and keep doing it, like again, I have this recipe in my head now because I've done it so many times and had a lot of fucking pancakes and hockey pucks and burnt, well, I never really burnt it too bad, but undercooked, definitely. All types of other shit, like, you know, it can go really bad, and depending on your oven too, like, you know, I cranked it up to 500 to get it warm. If your oven doesn't go to 400, or sorry, if your oven doesn't go to 500, just crank it up as high as you can. Again, the baking temperature is 425, most ovens can handle that, but again, the Dutch oven, super, super crucial. You got to make sure you have that. And again, a lom, which is basically like a razor, or like a super sharp knife can do the trick. And you know, there's like some people do cool designs and things like that. Again, you're basically just allowing a place for some of that air to escape, that steam to escape, without just blowing out the side of your bread and like kind of ruining the look of the outside. It's not the end of the world. That's not what exactly you're looking for. Again, this kind of like leaves a a nice little design on the outside. I kind of like. These actually come with like a little cloth as well. And like I said, if you don't have like I said in the first part of the episode, if you don't have a banneton, a basket like this, you can just use a regular mixing bowl and throw a little tea towel in there. So we got that baby in there. How are we looking? We got that baby in there for another half hour or so. When I take it out, or when I go to change it, it's kind of an awkward filming scenario. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it out. I usually put it back in at in about 30 minutes when the 35-minute timer goes off. I take it out, I take the lid off, I put it right back in for about 10 minutes. Usually does the trick. Again, like I mentioned, totally up to you, totally up to how you want the bread to be done. But we're going to do that about 30 minutes. I'm going to do my thing. And then we'll come back. I'll try and show off the bread as much as I can, but I'll just tell you when you take it out, again, you just got to let it cool nicely. But we'll be there soon. Podcast magic. All right, there we go. That was about, so it was in for 35 minutes, and I only did it for about 9 minutes extra. So I said usually it's about 10. But I peeked in there and I looked at it, and what I kind of go off of is like, usually when you cut it, however you cut it with the lawnmower or the scissors, like I said, you kind of look at those little flaps that come up called the ears. If those start to kind of brown up nicely, then that's how I usually call it. As you can see here, we got a nice little cutting open here. It's got a really nice crust to it. We'll see how it cuts open soon. So I guess that's the one hard part about this video. Well, I guess I can get some pictures of it. We'll show some pictures at the end, right at the end of this. I'll throw some up. Hey, how about right now? You can see how they look. Hopefully the crust looks good, but that's going to be up to us. So it looks fine right now. I look at the bottom here. Nothing's burnt. Really nice. It's hot, so again, that's why I'm using my glove here. And, okay, so I totally understand if you want to cut this thing open right now, you want that warm bread, you want that smell, I love that. The heat, you put the butter on it, melts right away. I know you're tempted to do that, but wait, let the bread settle still. It's actually still kind of cooking. So let it do its thing. If you really have a lot of time on your hands, you can listen. As it cools, it kind of has a little snap, crackle, pop action. But really nice. It's a really nice exercise in patience, because I really want to cut this thing open right now too. So let it sit for at least a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. The more the better, like obviously time permitting, but let it cool a little bit, at least to the touch. So we're going to let it sit there. I'm going to cut it open. I'll take some pictures for y'all later. Go out there, get some bread. If you ever have any questions, please reach out. Like I said, look at the recipe down below. I'll post the same one as I did in part 1. Or the rest of the recipe, I should say, from part 1. I'll post the whole thing. And, yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. Like, try some new stuff. Try different flour. Again, try and get that bread flour, but try different like, whole wheat flours and rye flours and things like that in your starter. Boost it up. Feed your starters regularly to keep it nice, and consistency is key. Again, we did things a little bit differently today, with this recipe because the starter was old, but I just wanted to, again, show y'all that take care of your starter, but they're pretty hardy once you get them going. I mean, they'll die pretty easily if you don't like build them up right away, if you're starting it from scratch, completely scratch, like just the flour and water method. But keep your starter happy, and your bread's going to be happy. Try different moisture contents, more or less water. You'll kind of tell, as long as the dough is workable, and you know it doesn't like completely fall apart and it's wet dripping, and then not dry enough that it doesn't even like stick to your hands. How much it sticks to your hands is a pretty good. Like you want it pretty sticky, not impossible to get off, but just a little left that you got to wash off. I don't know. That's the way I do it anyway. So again. Try some breads. Let me know how it goes. Thank you all for watching. It was so much fun doing this. Again, I was kind of living a little bit of the old food show host dream, I guess. Shout out Alton Brown. Shout out everybody. Naked Chef. That Chef Smith, whatever. The God, Anthony Bourdain. Mr. Anthony Bourdain, thank you, sir, for everything. I know you never did runs exactly like this, but you're always in anyone's hearts when they're thinking about this. But thanks, everybody, for watching. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/BigmarkPod if you want to donate. Like, subscribe to the video if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Please reach out on our DMs at the Bigmark Pod, at the Bigmark Podcast. Anything, ideas for new episodes, everything, reach out. And please like and tell everyone if you'd like it, I should say. Please tell all your friends. If you tell one friend, we can double the podcast overnight. Again, thank you all for watching. I love you all. Bread.